all of our friends, welcome to the Emunah Israel and Friends live virtual Challah Bake and Tu B'Shvat party. Now, maybe you're hearing the word Tu B'Shvat for the first time. This is the new year for the trees. And my name is Reverend Peter Fast, and I'm the National Director of Bridges for Peace Canada. And I just want to welcome you all to this wonderful Challah Bake. I'm sure we're going to be drooling and get hungry as we watch the process of the challah. It's all in good hands, and you are going to enjoy this time of challah bake, teaching, music, dance. This is going to be a wonderful time, and you're going to meet a number of different organizations. So I want to introduce our partners for starters. We have Emunah Israel. We have Ruth Guggenheim, as she is the director of Emunah Angels. We have Rabbi Annabelle Mas, who is the rabbi of Shaarey Zedek Synagogue here in Winnipeg. We have Dr. Rena, Secter Elbaze, who is the engagement and education director of Shaarey Zedek Synagogue. We have Rabbi Yosef Benarosh, who is the rabbi of Adas Yeshurun Herzliya Synagogue. And finally, myself, Reverend Peter Fast, is the National Director of Bridges for Peace Canada. So before we kick everything off, I just want to explain a little bit, how did this live challah bake come about? Like I've heard of challah for years. I love challah. I lived in Israel and I enjoyed challah before every Sabbath, before every Shabbat. But a challah bake, people coming together to bake challah, to make challah, and understand and talk about the significance, and then to kick it off, a virtual challah bake. How is this going to work? Well, just over a year ago, a pastor here in the city of Winnipeg, Pastor Rudy Fidel, had connected with Ruth Guggenheim, connected Ruth to Bridges for Peace. And after a meeting, our first meeting in our office, we knew, for Bridges for Peace, we knew we would like to partner with Emunah Israel in the future. We have a lot of things in common. And this led to a developing relationship between Emunah Israel and Bridges for Peace Canada, which led to the discussion of this unique event, a challah bake. With the COVID crisis now, naturally our plans to do this would have to be virtual. And with reaching out to some of our trusted friends and leaders in the Winnipeg Jewish community, of which I've named a few that are on this challah bake, we have been able to put this evening's event together. So this is an incredible time. I'm really looking forward to it. Sit back, relax, not too much because you're going to have to be baking some challah, but enjoy this time. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Ruth Guggenheim of Emunah Israel. Ruth, are you there? Oh,
I am here.
There you go, Ruth.
Hello. Okay, hello. First of all, shalom from Israel. As some of you know, I'm actually here in Israel, in Jerusalem. It is truly a wonderful opportunity to be joining our friends and family back in Canada. It is the middle of the night here, so I apologize if I might say some things wrong. But anyway, thank you. And I want to personally thank Peter and the Bridges for Peace team, the entire team. You're amazing for coordinating this and hosting it this evening. And our new partners, I am thrilled to become a partner now with Shaarey Zedek congregation and Adas Yeshurun Herzliya. It is truly a wonderful opportunity, and thank you for hosting this evening. So you just actually saw the kids in one of our homes singing Hallelujah. But before we actually talk about each and every project, I'd like you to think for a few minutes what it must be like to be an 11-year-old child who one night you wake up, you go to get something to drink, and you hear noise in your parents' bedroom, and you go to their room, and you see your father stabbing your mother to death. And then about a year and a half later, he commits suicide while he's in prison. You imagine what it's like to be a little girl who doesn't talk to adults and is afraid of people, but cries and has nightmares every night, thinking about the monster that comes to her bedroom and pulls down her panties and hurts her every single night. Can you imagine what it's like to be a mother of 4 children, married for 10 years, having been physically and mentally abused this whole time, and finally, after being threatened with your own life, you decide it's time to leave, to take your children to safety? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being a 90-year-old Holocaust survivor who for the last 10 years has lived totally by himself with nobody around? What is it like? Who do you turn to? How do you trust people? What do you have to believe in and to have faith in? You have faith in God, but you have faith in Emunah also. Emunah, which means faith, started in 1930s. In the 1930s, right at the time that the Nazis were taking over, the growing anti-Semitism, the persecution, there was a group of women, Anglo women, who decided they must rescue as many Jewish children as they can out of Europe and also out of the Arab countries that were also starting to persecute Jews. So they started having safe houses in Israel. They brought children here to rescue them, with God willing that they would ultimately see their parents. Some did, some never saw their parents again. That was the beginning of Emunah. And from that beginning, Emunah has grown today to be one of the leading social welfare, humanitarian aid organizations across Israel. We have over 160 projects that includes residential care facilities, schools, one of the largest networks of subsidized daycare centers, therapy and emergency crisis counseling centers. It goes on, because Emunah is about believing and having faith in the people of Israel. And I'd like to now have you look at a video, a small video, telling you a little bit more about Emunah.
Emunah cares for the most vulnerable children and families in Israel, 24/7, 365 days a year. So let's live a day in the life of Emunah. Caring for children all day when their parents can't, keeping them safe and secure. Providing a loving Jewish home, giving at-risk children hope for a better tomorrow. Supporting and educating children who have failed in the past, allowing them to thrive and succeed. Providing counseling and supporting women and children living with the daily threat of domestic violence. Giving seniors the time they need and a place in the heart of the community. Teaching parents the skills they need to cope with daily family life and to break the cycle. Rescuing at-risk infants to teens, providing a safe haven night and day. Providing a 24-hour lifeline to those affected by terror and conflict. Emunah in Israel helps 10,000 children and families every single day in our 135 daycare centers, 3 emergency shelters for children, 5 residential children's homes, 4 high schools educating 1,400 students, 13 family and crisis counseling centers, Emunah community centers, and seniors restaurant. timeless Emunah. We need your support today.
Hello, welcome to my home. I'm Rena, Secter Elbaze. I'm the Director of Engagement and Education at Congregation Shaarey Zedek. And I'm so excited that you're here to join me to bake challah this evening. So let's first look at what kind of equipment we're going to need. I'm going to take a bowl which is sufficient for a single recipe of the challah. If you're going to make a double or triple recipe, I would recommend a much larger bowl. You're going to need some measuring cups, a 1 cup and a 1/2 cup, as well as a 1/4 cup. I have a spatula, a beater, and a wooden spoon. You're going to need the following ingredients. The star ingredient, which is flour. No special flour, but just a regular baking flour. I have some yeast here, which I'll show you in a moment. I have some table salt or sea salt, fine, not a coarse salt. I have some canola oil. I'm going to need 2 eggs, and I'm going to need sugar. As we go along, I'm going to tell you the exact quantities. So let's start with the first step in our process, which will be to activate our yeast. Now, in order to do so, I'm also going to be using some water. Make sure your water is warm, not boiling, because boiling water and cold water will kill the yeast. I'm going to start with a 1/2 cup of water, warm water. You can also warm the bowl in advance by putting some warm water in it and swishing it around. And then we're going to need some sugar. I'm going to take 1 teaspoon of white sugar. I'll swish it around. The sugar helps to activate the yeast. And then I'm going to take some dry active yeast. It almost looks like a very fine powder, granules. 1 tablespoon of yeast. Now, this yeast is going to sit, just gently swish it around in the warm mixture of water and sugar. And we're going to leave this for 10 minutes until it starts to froth. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes and I've left the yeast to activate. I put the yeast in a 1/2 cup of warm water with 1 teaspoon of sugar, and I used 1 tablespoon of yeast. Now we're going to get our dough ready. So the very first thing I'm going to do is take another 1/2 cup of water. Make sure the water is warm, not boiling and not cold. If the water is too cold, the yeast won't activate. If the water is too hot, you'll kill it. Okay, then I'm going to take a 1/2 cup of oil. I like to use canola oil for this. I'm going to add that in. Then I'm going to take a 1/4 cup of sugar. And it wouldn't be complete without me telling you that this recipe comes from our beloved Noreen Gillets. May her memory be a blessing. And she did a challah bake with us about 5 years ago, and I've been using her recipe ever since. Then I'm going to take 2 eggs. This is what gives the challah its rich taste. Now, in Jewish tradition, we do not use an egg that has a blood spot in it. So I'm going to break the eggs one at a time into a little dish and just make sure that these eggs are suitable. Okay, there's my first egg. And one more. Perfect. So the last ingredient is salt. And in our recipe, we're going to use 2 teaspoons of table salt, not coarse salt. Be careful, don't put it into the water. Just add it to where you've put the sugar because you don't want the salt to come in direct contact with the yeast. Okay, now I'm going to mix this, not beat it, just mix it in to get those eggs worked in. And then we're going to add our flour. So I have a smooth mixture here, and you can smell the scent of the yeast, which is really quite delightful. I've measured out in advance 4 cups of flour, which is about the perfect amount. And I'm going to start adding it slowly. Don't dump it in all at once. So that's about a cup worth. And I'll just slowly start to incorporate it. As you add the flour, it's not going to work with this utensil anymore. Right now I'm using an egg beater, but I'm going to have to move on to something else once there's more flour in here. The lumps will come out as you go. You don't have to wait till it's smooth to start adding more flour. I'm just going to keep going and slowly mix this in. I usually like to make my challah the Thursday evening before or Friday morning. And if you're a little short on time, you can prepare your dough on Thursday evening, leave it to rise in the fridge, take it out Friday morning, braid it and bake it. That's really helpful if you're a busy person and you don't have enough time to leave it all for once. Okay, I'm almost there, and this is the stage in which this isn't going to work anymore. I'm passing to my next utensil. Okay, I think that seems about right. And start working this in. Your dough should be soft. You don't want to put more flour in than you need. So take your time and work that flour in progressively. Okay, I've used 4 cups here. And I'm going to work it in as much as I can using the spatula. And then I'm going to turn it out onto the counter and knead it. Okay. Knead it a little bit in the bowl to work in the extra flour. As you can see beside me, I have another cup of flour because you may need it as you go, and when you turn it out onto the counter, you're going to need that extra flour so that it doesn't stick. Now don't worry if this is a little bit sticky, that's okay. We're going to add the flour as we go. As we knead it, it will work itself in. I feel like it's about ready now. So a little flour onto my counter, smoothen it out. Make sure your work surface is clean before you start. You don't want to be improvising at the last minute. Now don't get rid of this bowl because you're going to put it back into the mixing bowl so it can rise. Okay, now for this, you're going to just push into it and pull back. Kneading this kind of dough is very important because you're creating fibers. Slowly, slowly. Great workout. If you can't get to the gym these days, this is the best. Okay, I'm going to add a tiny bit more flour here. There we go. And push and pull back as you go. And this should be starting to form a nice ball. Don't let it get too dry. You don't want to put too much flour in. This is looking about right. It's nice and soft. It's pliable. Okay. So here I have my ball of dough. Just dump the extra flour out onto your workspace. You should leave the workspace for later. Now I'm putting this here in this mixing bowl, and I'm going to cover it with a clean tea towel. This keeps it warm, especially in the winter when our kitchens are a little bit colder. We want to make sure that stays nice and warm. I'm going to leave it for a minimum of 45 minutes to up to 2 hours, and I'll come back and we'll knead it a little bit more and we'll start shaping and braiding our challahs. Okay, we'll see you in a little while. Hi everybody, I'm Rena. So I'm just waiting now while that dough rises, and I have a couple of other chalot here to present to you. One challah, two chalot as in Hebrew. Now you may be wondering why we always see two chalot in every picture and photo of the Shabbat table. And the reason is that after the children of Israel left the land of Egypt, they wandered for 40 years in the desert, and during that time, God provided food for them. They didn't have to do any work at all, and they got their portion of manna every day. Now, because we don't do any work on the Sabbath, they would get Friday night 2 portions that were to be eaten during the time of the Sabbath. So in memory of that, we usually put 2 challah on the table. Now, there's another thing that I didn't mention when I was preparing my dough, and you'll see this after, is we like to show our gratitude to God for all of the things that we have. And one of the important things that you'll do when your dough is ready is you'll remove a small portion of it. Now, if you make over 1 kilo, you'll make a special blessing. And this is a way of showing that this is something special that we receive. And we have to be thankful for all of the food that is put on our table. And this is my Tu B'Shvat table with the 7 fruits of Israel and a few extra ones for a little color. And now I'm going to pass off to Peter Fast, and we'll see you again once the dough is risen.
Well, thank you, Rena. I can, that table looks incredible. So what I want to do right now is, as the dough is rising, we're going to change a little bit direction, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about Bridges for Peace, and then we'll turn it over to Rabbi Annabelle Mass and Rabbi Yosef Benarosh, and they'll share a little bit about their work, their congregations as well. So Bridges for Peace, what is Bridges for Peace? We are Christians supporting Israel and building relationships between Christians and Jews in Israel and around the world. So I like to kind of describe it like 2 sides of one coin. So on one side, we're bridging a gap. So we're starting, as Christians, we're starting in the Christian world. That is our mission, that is our vision, our foundation is to start in the Christian world. We want to educate Christians. We connect with Christians all across Canada for the Canadian National Office, but we're also in 8 different countries around the world with our international headquarters in Jerusalem, Israel. And so to the church, we're educating the church. We want to be a resource to the church. We love the church. We're Christians and we're part of the church. But we want to remind Christians of God's love for Israel, God's covenant with Israel, what he's doing with the Jewish people and through the nation of Israel. And we're also wanting to remind Christians, because many of them have forgotten, or many of them just don't know these things or even consider these things, although it may be quite obvious to you or people on this call, but reminding Christians of our heritage as Christians, that our background, our heritage of faith comes from Judaism, that it's a Hebraic heritage, a Hebraic context. We talk about Jesus and the disciples, all Jews, Jews from Galilee. And this is our heritage that we look at. The Bible, Scripture, 3/4 of what we would say, 3/4 of our Bible, the Older Testament, or how Jews would refer to it as the Tanakh, the Torah, the Nevi'im, the Ketuvim, the writings and the prophets. 3/4 of that Scripture we share. We share so much in common. Of course, there's disagreements. Of course, we see some things differently, but we do share a lot, which means we should be talking together. So one of the things that we want to do is, through our education, is also take groups to Israel, show them the land of Israel, partner with Jewish leaders and Jewish organizations like tonight, connect, reconcile, bring us together in unconditional love. in relationship and dialogue without strings attached, to bring our communities together. We take groups to Israel to show them the land of Israel, the innovation, the prosperity, the prophecy coming true before our eyes. It's an incredible thing to see that. We have volunteers. We're a volunteer-driven organization, so we have volunteers in Israel running 2 assistance centers, one in Jerusalem and one in Carmel up north near the Sea of Galilee. And it's an incredible organization that I'm humbled and privileged to be a part of. We have Christians, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Christians that we've impacted, that pray for Israel, that stand with Israel. As an organization, we stand against all forms of anti-Semitism. And so we do advocacy in those areas, and we do advocacy for the modern state of Israel, and often the war of words, the attacks that come against Israel and the Jewish people in all forms. The other side of that coin now, because it's the other side of the gap. And why there's a gap is because when you really look at history, of course, not all Christians, we do see many Christians and Jewish people having genuine relationships of friendship in history. But what we do see is an ugly, unfortunate pattern among many of the church fathers in some congregations, denominations, and it building up throughout time of persecuting the Jewish people in the name of Jesus and in the name of Christianity. So it's a difficult, uncomfortable, tough subject to talk about, but it has happened in the past. There's aspects of that still happening today, even just the rise of anti-Semitism in general, in the form of anti-Israel rhetoric and these kinds of things is gaining momentum in nations around the world. And so we seek to counter that. And how do you counter that? Reconciliation, bringing our 2 communities together. And we work really hard. Since 1976, we've been working hard at this. So the other side of the coin is the work we do with and for the Jewish people and the nation of Israel. And this is like an incredible thing when you consider history and you consider today. So in Israel, we are one of the largest Christian organizations in Israel, and we are reaching needy Israelis with no strings attached, showing the love of God, reaching out to them and building them up, bringing them back to Israel. Let me give you a couple of numbers. We help 22,140 needy Israelis every month, distributing about 60 tons of food. Now, many people say, well, Israel's a really modern country. Like, why there's that many people that are in need? Well, roughly the statistics say about 25% of Israelis live below the poverty line. So there is great need. It's an immigrant absorption nation. We have helped as an organization over 85,000 Jews, mostly coming from the former Soviet Union, make aliyah, which means like to immigrate, to go up, to ascend. And it's an ancient biblical Hebrew word. But we've helped 85,000 Jewish people fleeing, many of them fleeing persecution, anti-Semitism of many forms, poverty, forced poverty in some of their cases, mainly coming from former Soviet Union, but now also coming from countries like France and the UK and others. We work with Holocaust survivors. We repair homes. Now, pre-COVID, we repair homes. We work in schools with children, dental insurance, school supplies. We stand in the gap and help some desperate people. We work with a lot of Ethiopian immigrants, Russian immigrants. It's an amazing thing. Vulnerable women as well, providing for orphans and widows. And it really is a humbling experience yet you see Gentile Christians from all over the world coming back to Israel to do this holy work. And now I just want to show a short little video that will give a little bit more depth so that you won't have to hear me yak, and it'll just put a little bit of a face to it. So watch this video right now.
Bridges for Peace. Christians supporting Israel and building relationships between Christians and Jews in Israel and around the world. Bridges for Peace, 50 years of blessing Israel and the church through compassion and revelation. Compassion. Feeding Israel's hungry. Caring for Israel's needy. repairing homes, giving hope to children in poverty, helping the Jewish people return to their ancient homeland. Assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. Revelation, bringing the Bible to life in its ancient context, revealing the truth of Israel's prophetic significance, telling the story of Israel's miraculous rebirth, connecting Christians and the Jewish people through a grassroots global team of Christian representatives. For God's instruction shall go forth from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Bridges for Peace, a Matthew 25 ministry dedicated to supporting the nation of Israel and bridging the centuries-old gap between Christians and Jews. Bridges for Peace, your Israel connection.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce two of my friends from the Winnipeg Jewish community. The first that will be speaking is Rabbi Annabelle Mass, and he comes from Shaarey Zedek's congregation. And then right after Rabbi Mass, Rabbi Yosef Ben-Rosh of Adas Yeshurun Herzliya Synagogue will speak. Rabbi Mass, Rabbi Ben-Rosh, welcome.
Thank you, Reverend Fast. It's a great pleasure to be here representing Congregation Shaarey Zedek. And we are a conservative synagogue here in the prairies of Winnipeg. And we are very active, very dynamic, doing lots of things, having many kind of different programs for the Jewish community. And we also volunteer a lot for the non-Jewish community. So it's great. And we also have a great ongoing relationship with Bridges for Peace. So it's a great pleasure to partner with Bridges for Peace once again, and of course with Emunah Israel. So thank you so much to Ruth Guggenheim for this opportunity so we can be here. We welcome also our partners, Rabbi Yosef Ben-Rosh and Rena, Secter, Elbaze, for all what they do here in Winnipeg. And what some people may not know is I am a rabbi, yes, but I'm also a cantor, which is a singer. Prayer leader. So as Reverend Fast was talking about how can we be together in this generation, I immediately thought about the words of the Psalm 133. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. How wonderful it is when brothers and sisters can be together. So I would like to sing it quickly for you the way we do it at the Shaarey Zedek. We sing like this. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim shevet Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Mas, and thank you very much, Reverend Fast. It's an honor to be here, and I want to thank Emunah for this wonderful program, especially to Ruth Guggenheim for your dedication and your tireless work on behalf of Israel. I think it's 3 o'clock in the morning right now in Israel, so we definitely recognize that. I have a very special connection to Emunah. My mother, growing up here in Winnipeg, my mother was one of the first members of the Emunah chapter here in Winnipeg. She was extremely active, and I've seen the work of Emunah firsthand. I also want to thank Bridges for Peace for your sponsorship of this evening and your organization is such a great blessing to Israel and to the Jewish people. And I want to thank Rena. I can tell you all that I have been invited to Rena's house. I've tasted her challahs, and they are extraordinary. My name is Rabbi Yosef Ben Harosh. I grew up here in Winnipeg, and I'm a graduate actually of the University of Manitoba. I went to the Jewish Day School here in Winnipeg. And in 1984, I fulfilled a dream that I had, and that was to make Aliyah and to move to Israel. And I did it. I met my wife there. We started our family, 7 children and 7 grandchildren now, and still growing, thank God. I proudly serve the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, as have my children. And now I am the rabbi of Adas Yeshurun Herzliya Synagogue, which is the most active Orthodox congregation here in Winnipeg. We have tremendous activities in our synagogues. Now with COVID, of course, everything is a little bit different, but we have daily services, both morning and evenings. We have many, many classes, adult education classes. We have children's programs, and the list goes on and on and on. We're an extremely active congregation. Of course, now, because of COVID, we're doing everything on Zoom, and we're continuing with our services, both morning and evenings and classes. Actually, I've never been as busy giving classes as with Zoom. It seems to be a platform that people find very, very comfortable. And as a result of that, we have a lot really going on in the synagogue. But I also have the best of 2 worlds, because even though I'm a rabbi here in Winnipeg of Adas Yeshurun Herzliya Synagogue, I still live in Israel. My wife and my family actually still live in Israel, and I go back and forth. And this way I get the best of both worlds. I fulfill this wonderful, wonderful dream that I have of being a rabbi and serving a community here in Winnipeg, in a city that I grew up in, but at the same time also living in Israel. And my family, my wife and I spent 6 weeks here and 2 weeks in Israel, going back and forth. My wife is actually remarkable that she actually agrees to this arrangement. But I have what's called in Hebrew an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. And so I have the best of both worlds. I spent 6 weeks in Winnipeg and 2 weeks back in Israel. Now with COVID, it's a little bit of a different setup, but I'm privileged to still live in Israel, have a home in Israel. My family lives in a settlement just south of Jerusalem called Efrat. And I've been living in Israel since 1984. And I'll speak a little bit more about it later on, but it is really a tremendous, tremendous privilege. And so I just want to say once again to Bridges for Peace, I've seen your work firsthand also in Israel. I remember meeting Victoria and a group of women from Bridges for Peace a number of years ago in the old city of Jerusalem. And so I'm very, very grateful for what I do. And I'm very, very grateful and thank God every single day for the life that he's actually given me. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Rena Elbaze for the second part of the Challah Bake presentation.
Okay, so we're back. The dough has been rising for about 45 minutes. Ideally, you could leave it 45 minutes to 2 hours. It should double in volume. So this one has risen nicely. I'm now going to turn it out onto my countertop, and I've put a little bit of flour because it's going to stick otherwise. Now with this single recipe, you can either make 2 chalot, which is traditional for the Shabbat to have 2 loaves. And if you have a smaller family, you could make it into 4. So today I'm going to do 2 for you, and I'm going to show you 2 different methods. So the first method is very simple, and it's wonderful for when you're really on the run. So I cut it in half, and I smoothen it out, flatten it down on my countertop, just like this. And this one is going to be a 3-strand braid. So all I do is cut. I cut it into 3 strips. So that's 2 cuts, okay, watching here. But I don't cut right to the far end. Be careful, you don't want to cut into your countertop, so take your time. So as you can see, I have 3 strands that are attached at one end, and I'm now going to make a 3-strand braid. So I'm going to take the left side and bring it to the middle, and then the right side and bring it to the middle. Take your time, and I like to do it very slowly and keep the surface facing upwards. Now the right side to the middle, the left side, the right side, the left side, the right side, the left side, all the way to the end. And you can leave it just like this. I like to tuck the end under on both sides and even it up. And there you have a very nice, simple shaped challah. We're going to leave these chalot for about 25 minutes to rise again on the baking tray. You don't have to, but it'll just give it an extra chance. Now you've seen that I've prepared a few other things here, because after it's had a little time to rise on the baking tray, I'm going to brush the top with a little beaten egg. Okay, and I have a little pastry brush right here. And then you have a choice of poppy seed garnish, sesame seed garnish, or poppy seed. And both look beautiful. And there's no specific symbolism there, but it's about the idea of being fruitful and multiplying, as far as your good deeds, as far as your happiness, and our families as well. So I'll make the second one right now. The same technique. You can always take it apart and make strands, but I feel this method really does give a nice result. And this is what I learned from my mother-in-law, who makes her own challah and makes special breads for all of the Jewish holidays. So there we go. I'll just get this one ready. Tuck it under on both sides, and they need a little bit of space between them so they have room to rise when they get into the oven. Okay. We're going to cover them. We're going to leave them for about 20 minutes. If you don't have time, you can skip this one step. Okay, so they've been rising, and I'm now going to brush them with the egg. Remember, you want to be sure that you turn on your oven while they're rising on the baking sheet. If you're making 2 loaves, you should have them at 400 Fahrenheit, or even better, 390 Fahrenheit. And if it's in Celsius, I believe that it is 175. So that would be for these 2, 25 minutes. If you decide that you want to make 4, then only 20 minutes. So I've brushed them with egg. I'm going to let it dry a little bit. And then one more coat. This way you have really shiny challah. 1 challah, 2 challah. Little poppy seed on this baby. There you go. And some sesame seed on this one. As soon as the oven's ready, I'm going to put them in.
Hello, my name is Victoria James, and I'm the National Outreach Director at Bridges for Peace Canada. And I'm here today with my husband, Reverend Donald James, who is the National Development Director at Bridges for Peace Canada. And we thought, what better way to wait for bread to rise than to dance? And we'd like to invite you to join us. First, I'd like to introduce our very good friends, Bruce and Linda Fern Kettner, as well as Gina Chodeker, who is Winnipeg's Israeli dance teacher extraordinaire. And they're going to give us a hand. Today is Tu B'Shavat, or the Festival of Trees on the Jewish calendar. Following our dance, Rabbi Yosef Ben-Arosh of Congregation Adas Yesharun Herzliya will expand our knowledge of this celebration. In honor of this holiday, the dance we have chosen is Tzadik Katamar. And I'm going to ask Don to read the text, which is taken from Psalm 92.
The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree and grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of the Lord, they shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bring forth fruit even in old age. They shall be fresh and full of sap. To declare that the Lord is upright, he is my rock, in whom there is no unrighteousness.
And now I'm going to hand it over to Gina. And please join us, even if you don't get all the steps right today, just find your own steps and have a great time. Gina?
Thank you, Victoria. So Tzadik Katamar is a circle dance. So I'm going to do my best to dance in a circle. So I may move a little quicker to avoid having my back facing you. So we start this dance by facing the line of the circle, which means our right shoulder is on the outside, our left shoulder is on the inside. So we start by taking 4 steps, starting with your right leg, which is the outside leg, and we start with the right foot, 4 steps. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we face the center, not with taking any more steps forward, but just face the center and sway back to the right and left 4 times. 3, 4. And then we do it again. Start with the right foot, face in line of the circle. We take 4 more steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we face the center and sway to your right and left 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's part 1. And that's all there is to part 1. 4 steps forward, face the center, sway right and left 4 times. 4 steps forward on the line, face the center, sway right and left. Everything in this dance starts with the right foot. Okay, now I'm just going to go back over there so that I'm not going to have my back to you for the next part. So the next part, again, we start with facing the center, start with the right foot, and we're going to move along the circle line. We're going to take 2 steps going forward, but we're facing center, so it's kind of diagonal at this point. 2 forward and diagonal, 2 backward. Okay, that's 4 steps again. In the first part, we did 4 steps all in a row going forward. This time we're taking 4 steps, 2 diagonally forward, 2 diagonally backward. And now this is the hard part. It's a turn with 2 steps, only 2 steps. And as we're turning, we're moving along the circle line, but it's kind of hard to just stop after 2 steps. But I'm going to ask you to try your best to stop. So it's 1, 2. It's a full turn, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to start again over here so you can see it's a full turn in 2 steps. 1, 2. You kind of almost have to spin on the ball of your foot to complete the 2 to the second step. So my foot is right foot is down because I lost my balance. But now we're going to do the next part. But before we do that, let's review that part. 2 forward, 2 backward, and then a quick turn in 2. 2 forward, 2 backward, and quick turn in 2. 1, 2. Okay, but now I'm going to go back here. And in order to, you want to put your right foot down because you're off balance. That's the first step of the next part. So to make this easy in my brain how to teach this, I'm going to teach it like this. Take 2 steps to your right. Change your mind and go back. Now take 2 steps to your left. 1, 2, change your mind, come back, and then sway the 4 times again. So that looks like this. Go to the right 2 steps, nah. Go left 2 steps, nope. And 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the whole dance, but I'm going to put that whole second part together. So we do 2 forward, 2 backward, turn in 2, and now I can put my right foot down 2 steps this way, change my mind, 2 steps this way, change my mind, and sway 2, 3, 4, and we do that whole part again. 2 forward, 2 backwards, quick turn in 2, step to your right twice, come back, step to your left, come back, and sway 2, 3, 4. Do your best, just keep moving and have fun.
Okay, that was wonderful. It's actually a great lead-in to Tu B'Shvat, because Tu B'Shvat actually is a very happy holiday, and that was, I think you'll all agree, that was a very happy song. So I want to tell you a little bit about Tu B'Shvat, the day that we're celebrating. For us, the Jewish people, there's not 1 New Year's, and not 2 New Years, not 3 New Years. There's actually 4 New Years. And one of them we celebrated today. It's called Tu B'Shvat. Tu means is the numerical value of 15. It's the 15th day of the month of Shvat, which we are in right now, and it's the new year for fruit-bearing trees. That's what we commemorated today. And in fact, this day, this holiday, it really has even biblical significance in terms of tithing. When the people in Israel would tithe, and then Tu B'Shvat became the cutoff date for that time. But now it's actually a huge celebration, and many people have what's called a Tu B'Shvat Seder. It's kind of like on Passover, we have a Seder, we also have a Tu B'Shvat Seder, and I even have here a book, a Haggadah, I don't know if you can see this, a Haggadah that actually goes through the Tu B'Shvat Seder. What is Tu B'Shvat? Why do we celebrate Tu B'Shvat? Well, during the Seder, what we do is we actually eat all kinds of different fruits and vegetables and cakes and cookies and so on, and we make a blessing on every one of them. And what is a blessing? The blessing basically is a recognition that everything that exists in the world was put here by God. This is God's world, and we're visitors. And when we eat something, we ask God for permission, and we also thank God for the food that was given to us. And that is what a blessing is. And so in Judaism, everything, and anytime we eat in Judaism, we make a blessing. When we eat bread, we make a blessing. When we drink wine, we make a blessing. When we eat fruits, we make a blessing. When we eat vegetables, we make a blessing. There's a blessing for every single occasion. And even for something that doesn't grow from the ground, there's also a blessing. We call it Shehakol Niya Bidvaro, that everything was created with his word. And so this is a very, very special time of the year on Tu B'Shvat where we try to acknowledge this and we try to make all the different blessings that we possibly can. One of the things that we do that's very, very special is we try to especially eat the fruits of the land of Israel. There are 5 fruits that are the fruits of Eretz Yisrael, of the land of Israel. They are olives, dates, grapes, figs, and pomegranates. And those become very, very special on Tu B'Shvat. So I just wanted to share with you another idea. A New Year's for trees? I mean, that sounds preposterous. Why in the world would we make such a big deal about trees? And why would we make a New Year's just for the trees? So there's many ideas. I wanted to share one idea with all of you. There is actually a very interesting verse in the Torah, in the book of Dvarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 20, verse 19, and the Hebrew reads as follows: Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh, for a person is like the tree of the field. And this is a fascinating comparison. According to the Torah, according to the Bible, a human being is compared to a tree. What an odd comparison. Why in the world would we be compared to trees? And so I wanted to share a number of ideas of how we resemble trees. And the first one is that a tree, especially a fruit tree, right? This is what Tu B'Shvat is all about. It's about fruit trees. It reminds us that we always have to live with hope. We always have to live with faith. Just think about what a tree is. A tree, during a certain part of the year, loses all of its fruits and all of its leaves, and it starts to shrivel and it starts to fade, and it looks like that tree is about to die. And then all of a sudden, the new season comes along, and that tree that we thought was dying, all of a sudden during the new year comes back to life, and its leaves come back, and then it starts to bud and to blossom, and then it starts to have its fruits, and it grows back all over again. And this is really quite remarkable, because the tree is a lesson to us to never give up, to always have faith, to always have hope. And this is why we are like the tree, because that's the way we have to live our lives. And you know, when you think about it, this is the story of Jewish history. Reverend Fass spoke about this a little earlier before, but for 2,000 years, the Jewish people were in exile. The Jewish people were persecuted, and we were like that shriveled tree. It looked like the end was just around the corner, and we were about to be gone. And we went through so much oppression and so much persecution. And then in the year 1948, a great miracle happened, and the state of Israel was born, and the Jewish people now had their homeland restored, and they could return to their homeland, and the words of the prophets came true. It's one of the great reasons why I made Aliyah, because this is prophecy basically unfolding, and how could I not be a part of all of that? The Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, which was written over 2,000 years ago, made an amazing comment. The rabbis, while in exile in Babylonia, said, you know when you will know that redemption is coming? When the trees of Israel will once again begin to bear their fruits and give their fruits to the Jewish nation, then you will know that redemption is just around the corner. And for 2,000 years, the land of Israel lay desolate. And when the Jewish people returned, they started kibbutzim and moshavim and all kinds of agricultural communities, and the land of Israel began to bear its fruits as the Jewish people returned, and we are witnessing that redemption today. And so this is the story of the Jewish people, to always have hope, to always believe, to always realize that no matter how far down you've gone, you can always go up again. I think there's another message that the trees teach us, and that's the importance of sharing. Imagine how sad a tree would be if it was bearing fruits and nobody would eat its fruits. The whole purpose of a fruit-bearing tree is so that people will come and take their fruits and taste their fruits. And I always imagine that if you would be standing next to a tree and you would take the apple or the pear or the orange and you would bite it and you would smile because of the sweet taste of that tree, then I would imagine that the tree would also be smiling along with you. And so the tree teaches us the importance of sharing, that we have fruits, but we have to share it with everyone else. And obviously the last point that I wanted to mention is that the tree also teaches us how important it is to have patience, because it takes a long time for a tree to give its fruits. And then you have the whole cycle of the year. My wife and I just planted a lemon tree in our backyard in Israel, and it's about 4 years old, and it still hasn't given us fruits, but we have hope, we have faith, and we know it's going to give us beautiful lemons, and we know that it's going to give us a tremendous, tremendous satisfaction. And so that is a little bit of why we are called the Torah. The Bible says that we are like the trees. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. And so with that, it is Tu B'Shvat, and I'm not going to lay out a whole table of all these different blessings, but what I do have, I like a good bottle of wine, and what I do have is a nice bottle of wine from Israel. What better to drink from the grapes of the land of Israel? So here you have a wine that is from, actually it's called Efrat, it's not from Efrat where I live, but I will make the blessing over the wine. It's a very, very important blessing. And if you have wine, you can also make this blessing, and you can also drink from this wine on Tu B'Shvat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagefen. And with that, I want to again thank Emunah and Ruth Guggenheim. I want to thank Bridges for Peace. I want to thank Rena Elbaze for her wonderful challah bake, to Rabbi Anibal Mas, and also to Reverend Fast for this wonderful, wonderful program and the opportunity to speak this evening. And I'm going to turn things over now to Rena for part 3 of the delicious challah bake.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Rabbi. That was so beautiful. Now, as you can see, I have my challah here. It's come out of the oven, and how did I know it was ready? I gave it a little tap, and it had a little bit of a hollow sound, and it was golden. I took it out of the oven, I covered it with a towel. And there's a lot of work that goes into making a challah. And a challah is a beautiful symbol of the partnership between God and man. It's not like a fruit that you can take off the tree and just take a bite out of it. The challah takes a certain amount of transformation. And as you can see, a lot of time, a lot of effort. Now, if by the way, you didn't have a chance to make your challah while you watch the video tonight, it will be available. We're going to send you a link, and within 24 hours, you'll be able to watch it again and practice. But after putting in so much effort and so much work, we have to say a blessing. We have to show gratitude for this incredible transformation that has been made possible and that we have partnered with. And to make that blessing, you can see I've got a little salt shaker here. Rabbi Mas is going to take us through the different portions of the blessing and what we would do on a Friday night in front of this beautiful challah. So with no further ado, I will pass on to Rabbi Mas.
Thank you so much. And yes, I do have my challah here. So you can see it. I have it just in front of me. And I have this beautiful cover that it was made by my son at school, that it says Shabbat. And I have 2 little challahs here. And this beautiful challah board that came from Israel is part of an olive tree. And it's, we use it exclusively for the challah. So as you can see, I think, and Rena mentioned it before, we have the 2 chalot. You need 2. Because one of the things that we remember every time that we eat challah is the manna that used to fall at the desert after the Israelites left Egypt. And they used to have 1 portion of manna every day, but there were 2 portions on Friday because God told the Jewish people that they wouldn't have any manna on Saturday. So they have to pick up 2 portions. And we also put salt on top, which, and one of the explanations is that whenever we put the salt on top of the challah, we also imagine the manna falling from heaven. And then we take the 2 pieces of bread and we say the blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz Amen. And we are saying, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who bring forth bread from earth. And we pass it to everybody so we can all eat the challah. But whenever we celebrate Shabbat, it's not just about eating challah. We also, it's not that we just bless the bread, we bless also the candles, and we bless the wine, and we bless each other. And there is a beautiful song that we share, at least in my family, every Shabbat, and it's the blessing of the kids. We have the blessing of being able to recite a blessing over our son. And this blessing has two parts. If you have a boy, you recite one set of words, and if you have a daughter, it's a different set of words. For a son, we say, may God bless you like Ephraim and Manasseh, and this is coming from the Bible. And if it's for a girl, we say, may God bless you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, the matriarchs of Israel. And then after that, we recite the Aaronic blessing, the threefold blessing found in the Torah, may God bless you and keep you, and so forth. So I would like to sing it for you the way we sing it in our Shabbat table at the time that we share the challah. And it goes like this. Yesimcha Elohim Kefraim Vehi Menashe La 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 la. Yesimcha Elohim Kesara Rivka Rachel Veleya La 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 la. Yevarechecha Hashem veishmerecha Yair Adoshem panav elecha vichunecha Yisa Hashem panav elecha Veyasem lecha Shalom. La 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Isa Shem Banav Elecha. Veyahasem lecha shalom. There is always a good excuse to ask God for shalom, for peace. So again, thank you so much for the invitations. Thank you to Emunah Israel, Bridges for Peace, for putting this together. And thank you, Rabbi Yossi Ben Arosh, for your teaching. Rena, Secter, Elbaze, for your wonderful recipe, for sharing that secret with all of us. And thank you all for tuning in and for sharing this amazing moment together. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. And now it's time to continue with Ruth Guggenheim, who is going to continue with the program.
Hello. Oh my gosh, tonight was just so unbelievably inspirational. I can't tell you, sitting here in Israel, what an amazing feeling I have knowing all of you and those around the world that are joining us, that together we were united as one tonight, sharing in the blessings that God has for all of us. And this is exactly what Emunah wants to do, to build these bridges together, to unify ourselves on behalf of God's children, on behalf of the vulnerable and the needy in Israel. We thank you tonight for joining us. Most importantly, as it says in scriptures, that we should show mercy and compassion to the orphan, to the widow, to the needy, to the poor. And at Emunah, that is what we do. And together, we can take action. The goal to have faith and to have trust in God is wonderful, but we know that God wants us to take action, to rise to the occasion, to do what we can do to help those in need and those who must be supported, who must rise, just like we saw the challah rise. Dough is like that. Dough can be flat, people can be flat, but once we put the ingredients together, all the various pieces, we can rise to the occasion. We can help these children. We can help these families in need in Israel by all of us taking action. And tonight, on behalf of all of us, the children and families of Emunah, ask that you consider supporting us and consider becoming a part of the Emunah family, that together we can be one, united in God's work. And again, thank you everyone tonight. Rena, the challah, I wish I was there to eat it. Actually, it's almost time for me to get up and make my own challah. It's gonna be Shabbat here. So from Israel, from the Emunah family to your family, Shabbat Shalom. May we all be blessed with many, many years together as friends and united as one. Thank you. And again, I turn it back to Reverend Fast. Peter, thank you for everything. Lila Tov.
Oh, Lila Tov, Ruth. Well, I just want to thank everyone. In conclusion, what an amazing combination of teaching and music and dance and food. This has just been a wonderful thing. And I have not tasted Rena's challah yet. I've had some pretty incredible challah in Israel and here. My wife actually makes some pretty good challah, but just before this evening started, Rena did say, well, once things get back to normal, we'll have you over for Shabbat. So I'm going to hold you to that, Rena. So I just want to thank the partners and participants. So I'm going to read just a little list here. I want to thank Ruth Guggenheim with Emunah Israel. Ruth, it's just been such a pleasure working with you and developing this, also becoming friends as well. And Rabbi Annabelle Mass, I want to thank you, as well as Rena, Secter Elbaze of Shaarey Zedek Synagogue. I want to thank Rabbi Yosef Ben Rosh of Herzliya congregation. And I also want to extend thanks to Dawn and Victoria James. Dawn is our National Development Director. He was the one in the dance that read the scripture, and his wife Victoria is our National Outreach Director. They both work with Bridges for Peace. I also want to thank Bruce and Linda Fern Kettner and Gina Chodurker for the dancing. And Gina, thank you for leading us through that. I want to thank the technical side, okay? These are the people working behind the scenes. Paulo Bautista and my own wife, Deanna Fast, working at the Bridges for Peace office, setting up all the tech behind the scenes, also working with some of the advertisement. And then I also want to thank the Emunah Israel team, because I know that they were deeply and heavily involved in also advertisement design and rolling these things out. Also, I want to finally thank the behind the scenes people that all have names at Shaarey Zedek Synagogue and Adasia Sharon Herzliya, sharing the program registration with their classes and their congregations, posting it on social media. It has been a joy to work with all of you. So in conclusion, I want to encourage everybody on here tonight and those that will watch the recording later. I want to encourage you all to take photos of your challah, post those photos of the challah pictures on social media with the hashtag ChallahBake2021 or hashtag Emunah Israel or hashtag Bridges for Peace Canada. God bless you all. Lehitraot, shalom, and thank you for joining us this evening. This has been a blessing, and may the Lord bless you and keep you. Bye-bye. Take care.